All right, we are live. What is going on, everybody? Thank you for joining me tonight here on Blind Whiskey Reviews, where we're doing our wrap-up show for the Distillery Wars shootout with our workhorse whiskey. So I am glad to have a few of you in here. Hopefully a few more will show up, and we can have a good time tonight. Let me see if I can pull up the chat here. See who's already in here. So right now it looks like we might have Professor Toady, what's up, man? Richie Z, what is up, buddy? Cooper 57LM, Bill, what's up? Jamie Williams, who else is in here? Tom Fay, a couple others it looks like maybe joining us. So very glad to have you guys in here. As always, if you guys have some questions or whatever, like I said, I wanted to do a lot of Q&A tonight about this whole thing. If you guys had any questions, some people sent me some questions in the comments on the video today, and this camera a little bit. And looks crooked, doesn't it? Anyways, some people sent me some questions on the no plaid. Some people sent me some questions on the chat today, and some people emailed me some questions. So we'll definitely be getting to those. If you guys have any questions that you think of while we're going through this, just make sure you tag me in the chat. That way I see it. Otherwise, the stuff starts blowing by and I don't really catch it sometimes. So anyways, first things first, let's pour some whiskey. So I think it only proper if we start with the winner of our shootout, which I hope all of you know by now. If not, spoiler alert, but was the Old Forester 100 proof. I was surprised by this, and we'll definitely get into my predictions prior to this whole shootout a little bit later. But I was definitely surprised at this one. I didn't think this would be the winner when I guessed ahead of time, so we'll get to that in a bit. But let's pour a little bit of this whiskey. I hope you're all having something to drink right now. And again, I hope you guys are all safe and sound at home. I hope you have plenty of whiskey in your bunker so you're not running dry and not being able to get out and get some more whiskey. So anyways, guys, cheers. Let's have a good night tonight. Hope you guys are drinking on something good too. And we'll get into this a little bit, but, Old Forester 100 won the shootout. And I was really surprised by that. And not because I didn't think it was good whiskey, but because I haven't had it in a long time. And the last time I had it, I don't think it was this good. Like, I don't know if they've improved their recipe, if they've improved the quality, whatever the case may be. But I just don't recall it being as good as it turned out to be. So really fantastic stuff. I know a lot of you guys mentioned in the comments that you've either are going to pick up a bottle or have already picked it up, and we're really impressed with it too. So I'm really surprised, but I'm really happy that it was able to win. So who else has joined us in the chat? We got John Leeser, Brian Griffiths, Roscoe Coltrane, Patrick Fulmer, Scott from My Bourbon Journey. What's up, buddy? So yeah, this is gonna be a lot of fun. Got a few things to talk about tonight. Like I said, if you do have any questions, definitely tag me in the chat and I'll try to grab those as we go too. So first and foremost, I do want to thank my wife. If you guys caught the setup video, I let you guys know that my wife was the one that really was behind the scenes on all this. She poured all the different rounds of whiskey. She managed the bracket. I couldn't have done it without her. So thank you so much, baby. I love you. Hopefully you watch this. I'm pretty sure you're not watching right now, but hopefully you catch this later. So anyways, got to give her all the credit. She deserves it. She did a great job. And yeah, she was the one behind the scenes. Couldn't do it without her. Anyway, so I wanted to talk about a little bit about the setup. So there was a few critiques about the whole double elimination tournament. For the most part, everybody seemed to really enjoy it, but there was a few critiques. People didn't like the way it was set up. But really, at the end of the day, guys, there is no perfect tournament setup, and it was kind of evidenced a little bit in the way that this tournament turned out. So if you saw the way the results came, it's kind of in some cases, and not always. I think the best tend to rise to the top, but in some cases, you're going to get bad matchups. And this is true of any tournament. You go to the basketball tournament or whatever the case may be, you get bad matchups. And if you don't get the right matchups to get you kind of towards the later half of the tournament, you're in bad shape. So I think, if you take the order that these whiskeys finished in, it may be not 100% representative of where they fall in the line, right? Like, as an example, Four Roses came in 7th in the shootout behind Woodford. And I would say, I think that generally Four Roses tastes better than Woodford, but those two never met up in the shootout. Who did Woodford meet up with in the first round? Woodford lost to Wild Turkey early on, but then Woodford ran into Maker's Mark. And I think Maker's Mark was kind of the favorite to lose this thing going in. But I think that, I mean, it was my prediction too, that I didn't think Maker's would come in. I thought it would be my least favorite. And that's how it panned out in the tournament. But, you know, like I said, Four Roses came in 7th, and I really think it probably should have been 6th. So we'll see how that goes. Jamie Williams says Maker's Mark stinks, and I won't say that it stinks, but it's definitely not my favorite whiskey. That is for certain. So, anyways, hold on, my chat just closed here. And yeah, Dave Soderholm says, surprise, Elijah Craig didn't do better. And again, I think that was sort of a function of matchup. So let's look. Let me bring the bracket out here. Let's look who Elijah Craig matched up with. So in Elijah Craig's first round, it matched up against Knob Creek. And again, I think Knob Creek was the entire time one of the favorites to win this thing. And so it got an L off the bat, and I think that was pretty well expected. In the next round, Elijah Craig ran into Four Roses and won. But after that, it ran into Wild Turkey, who came in second. So again, I think it's just kind of a function of, I think it's just a bit of a function of how the tournament felt, you know, panned out. And that's all random. So it is what it is. You know, you can't always come in the places you deserve necessarily, because sometimes matchups do make a difference. Who else just joined us? Oh, Bourbon Sane joined us. What's up, buddy? Oh, I got a funny comment about you. Hold on. Someone, let me pull up this comment, because someone on the video today brought up a topic that I thought was funny. And let me see if I can find it here. Aha, here it is. Sneck, it's a snack. Don't know what that means, but he commented today, someone has to ask, did you steal the idea from Bourbon Sane or vice versa? So I can definitively say I didn't steal the idea from anyone. I don't know if he's done a double elimination head-to-head blind shootout. I didn't know about it. I didn't see it. I know he's doing a bracketed tournament. I don't know what the rules or the setup is right now, so I haven't seen it yet. But couldn't tell you if I stole it. I don't know. I don't know if anybody's ever done a whiskey head-to-head blind double elimination tournament. So I'm sure you guys can tell me in the comments if you've seen one before or if anybody's done one. But as far as I am aware, no one's done it. And if they have, oh well. Double elimination tournaments aren't proprietary. So sorry about it. But as far as I know, I have not seen one of these before. So take that for what you will. Oh, Bourbon saying that's not exactly what I'm doing. We were both in the clear. Yeah, like I said, not proprietary to do a double elimination tournament, so I wasn't too concerned about it. But yes, that was a comment that made me laugh. So anyways, I wanted to get into a little bit about how I chose these whiskeys. It was with a lot of help from you guys. I posted on Instagram and Twitter long ago. This was months ago when I really had the idea to do this tournament. I posted on Instagram and Twitter to ask you guys what you wanted to see, to kind of give me some help in picking the whiskeys that were here. I did get some comments, and I don't know if I saved them or not, but I did get some comments from some people that said they wish that the whiskeys were more evenly matched. And I do understand that sentiment. However, this tournament wasn't about matching the whiskeys in terms of like, this is a premium whiskey, this is a budget whiskey, this is this. It was really my main factor in choosing these whiskeys was the price. I wanted to pick whiskeys that are all around the same price point, because if you can get Knob Creek for $25 and you can get Wild Turkey for what I paid for it, which was $18, then why would you buy the Knob Creek? And I'm not saying that variety isn't important, but you know, if you can get a superior whiskey for a considerable amount cheaper, like a third less of the price, why wouldn't you do that? And that's what I wanted this tournament to show. And so we'll talk about the prices on the whiskeys a little bit here. And I'll just tell you what I paid for them. Obviously, everybody's mileage varies. And I got a lot of that commentary throughout the shootout that, you know, hey, that's not what I pay. It's, you know, Knob Creek is $40 where I am. And I totally get it. All I can say is I definitively have to go by what I paid for them, because that's all the only thing I know. So, the Old Forester was, I think, $20.99. So the winner was $21. Second place was Wild Turkey, which I paid $18 for. Knob Creek came in third, which I paid $25 or $25.99 or $24.99, something like that, $26. Buffalo Trace was fourth, and it was $20. Elijah Craig was $25. Woodford was one of the more expensive. It was like $25. The Four Roses was 25 and it came in 7th. Again, I think it should have done a little bit better, but and the Maker's Mark was about 20. So a couple of our most expensive whiskeys in the shootout came in the back half. So that's kind of really what I wanted this shootout to demonstrate is there's we all kind of know this, but that whiskey and price and quality don't necessarily match, right? Like it really, the quality of the whiskey is really based on who's putting it out, and the price point doesn't really matter. So anyways, that's kind of what I wanted to demonstrate with this, but those were the prices I paid for these whiskeys. Like I said, I feel like I, in general, have some pretty good pricing in my area on this type of whiskey. So I know that some of you guys are paying more for this stuff, but that being said, that was kind of what I was going for. We will definitely be doing more shootouts in the future, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But we'll definitely be doing more shootouts in the future, and we'll do more like evenly matched. Like I really want to do at some point, and maybe it won't be the next one, but a bottled and bond shootout will be great. A budget whiskey shootout will be great. Maybe we'll do like a $15 price point and below. Everybody, I'd say the most requested shootout that people have asked me to do, and I knew this is the case, this is the one I would want to see, is barrel proof bourbons, or at least close to it, high proof bourbons. And I definitely want to do that one. However, when I'm doing these shootouts, I really feel it's like kind of important to make it as evenly matched as possible, which would mean I need to buy all those whiskeys. And quite frankly, to buy it, if I only did 8 whiskeys, and I'd like to do kind of more, I'd like to mix maybe some more whiskeys into these tournaments. But if I just did the minimum 8 whiskeys, that would, to be honest, it's going to cost me like $500 to do one of those barrel proof shootouts. So we'll get there at some point. Maybe after I start a Patreon account and then we have a little bit of extra funds for the channel, we'll do that. I definitely want to do it, but I definitely don't just want to take the barrel proof whiskeys that I currently have and just start using those for the shootout. Because it takes a lot of whiskey to do the shootout. And I don't necessarily know that I have enough in a particular bottle to do that. Or I don't want to have freshly opened bottles with bottles that have been open for a year being compared side by side. I don't think that's really a fair comparison. So we will get there at some point. I promise, but I don't know when. But it's coming. That's definitely what I want to do. I think the bottled and bond one might be a fun one to do next, or rye whiskey, and there's so many different shootouts we can do. So I'll definitely be polling you guys at some point in the near future here to figure out what shootout we are going to do next. So one thing I teased in the video this morning was that there was some issues when shooting this bracket. So I wanted to get into that a little bit. Let me just check these comments a little real quick before we switch gears here. Bill Cooper 57M is saying bottled and bond would be nice. Yeah, I really agree. I think that'd be a fun one, and it'd be one that's probably going to be the best in terms of evenly matching the whiskeys. Daniel Holmes said, I prefer high proof bourbons, as do many current bourbon drinkers, with your top 3 being 100 proof or over. What do you think the proof? What do you think proof is what makes the bourbon today? I don't think proof is necessarily what makes bourbon. In this case, I think that these whiskeys definitely benefited from a little bit of extra proof. I don't feel like 90 proof is the ideal proof point for whiskey necessarily. So I really think that having the higher proof helps. I don't think that necessarily barrel strength or barrel proof whiskey is the best example of the whiskey, because sometimes that heat can overwhelm your palate and it overwhelms some of those flavors. But I definitely think a little bit higher proof is helpful. So, his secret is out. His name is Bill. Sorry, I dropped that on you. So anyways, yeah, that's definitely my opinion on it. I think the proof in this case helped a little bit, but I also, as I mentioned in the shootout a lot, I really tried not to judge based on the power of the flavor of the whiskey, although that kind of came down to tie breaking at some points. I really wanted to judge the whiskey on complexity, on depth of flavor, on balance of those flavors. So I really wanted to take those things into account first before I really took the extra power that extra proof would provide into account. So I tried my best to do that. I don't know if that's gonna work or be the case, but it is what it is. So I tried my best to be unbiased about that. So anyways, like I said, I mentioned some issues with this shootout. So the first, and actually another question I got asked is somebody I think emailed me or something, but another question I got asked was how many videos was I shooting in a day? So the shootout got shot in a bit more of a rapid pace than I would have liked to have shot it. If I had it my way, I probably would have shot, 2 to 4 of them at a stretch or in a day. But the way it ended up going was I ended up being gone almost the entire time that I was shooting this bracket. So I was working out of town. I was gone 4 out of 5 weeks during the time that I was shooting this bracket. So I was having to come home and rush through these things on the weekends. You'll probably notice in a couple of these videos that you might think I'm drunk. I'm never really drunk in the video, but I look really tired. Like my eyes are all puffy and I look super tired because I was shooting some of these things like incredibly late at night. So, because that was the only time I had, like I was flying home on a Saturday and I would be leaving again on Sunday night or something like that. So I was shooting these things at, midnight, 1, 2 in the morning on a Saturday night just to try to get them done. I'd already started the process. And it was kind of like I activated the launch sequence. I couldn't stop. So I had to just crank them out late at night and do the damn thing. So that was kind of what happened with that. But I had kind of teased, I had a blunder go on during this shootout, and I don't really know what caused it. It could have been my wife didn't hear me correctly when I gave her the winners of the shootout. It could have been I told her wrong. I don't 100% know. But what I do know is one whiskey early on in the tournament got advanced, and it shouldn't have. And so by the time I realized it, I had shot most of the rest of the videos, which meant I had to go back. I kept the videos that still worked for the shootout, but I had to go back and reshoot a bunch of stuff. And to make sure that it was blind, I had to shoot a bunch of extra videos that I didn't need because I wanted to make sure that I couldn't tell what whiskeys were what and things like that. So I had to go back and fix some of the bracketing, and it didn't impact the end of the tournament at all, but it did impact a couple of the intermediary matchups leading up to it. So I got those back in. I reshot some of those. So what that means for you guys is I have a bunch of extra. It's not a bunch. I think I probably got 5. I've got 5 extra blind side-by-side head-to-head shootouts out of these 8 whiskeys that I'm going to be getting out for you here in the near future. So those will be bonus footage for you guys. Obviously, they're not part of the tournament. Those matchups never actually occurred into the bracket, so they're just extra bonus footage. So you'll be getting those in the coming weeks here. So a little bit of a bonus for you. Looking in the chat here. Yeah. Bill says, we appreciate your efforts and sacrifices drinking whiskey all night. How terrible. I know, guys, it's tough, but somebody has to do it. I do it for the people. What else do we got in here? I've got Black Hemi 04. Have you ever had Early Times bottled in bond? I have had Early Times bottled in bond. It's not available in my area that I've ever seen. So I was able to drink some of it. Actually, with Kyle from Bourbon Blind, I was hanging out with him when I was in Tennessee last year, and he had some of it, and we tried it then. I thought it was actually quite good, especially for the price point. I mean, I think that was like a $15 bottle or so, and it was really pretty darn good quality. So I was super impressed with that. So just to give you a heads up, you guys will get the sneak peek on the shootouts that are coming up. Some of these, I think we already kind of know who's going to be the winner, but it'll be fun to do them anyways. We got Knob Creek versus Four Roses as an extra. Elijah Craig versus Buffalo Trace, which I think that'll be a good shootout. Old Forester versus Elijah Craig. I mean, I think we kind of know who's going to win that one. Knob Creek versus Woodford Reserve. Again, that one's a pretty straightforward one. And Buffalo Trace versus Old Forester. So I think some of those are pretty easy guesses as who's going to win, but it'll be fun to show you guys. And maybe I messed up and got one wrong. Doubt it, but maybe. So there is that. What area? Dave Soderholm is asking what area of the country I am in, and I am in Southern California. So we got a pretty darn good selection of whiskey here and some pretty reasonable pricing too, but there's just some whiskeys that don't ever make it out here. Like Very Old Barton never makes it out here. Early Times never makes it out here. And there's a few other brands like that just, for whatever reason, don't make their way out here. I don't know why, but they just don't. Now, I have not been drinking enough at all. So, guys, cheers. And we'll talk about a little bit more stuff here. And definitely let me know what you guys are sipping on in the chat over here. And I will let you guys pick my next pour. So the first person to tag me and tell me which of these 8 bourbons to pour, that'll be what's going in my glass next. So anyways, let's get into my predictions as to what I thought was going to win this tournament. So when I started this thing, before I started, I wrote down a list of who I thought would win this tournament. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to do a comparison and see how it panned out. So I think a lot of you know. All right, the first one to tag me was Cooper 57M, Wild Turkey. How did I guess? All right, let's pour some Wild Turkey here before I get into this. But I think most of you know, if you watch my channel a bit, what my preferences are. I don't hide that in any sense, but I'm a big Knob Creek fan. I love Knob Creek, and I think it's a fantastic value pour. So Knob Creek was what I thought would take number one. Now, I really thought it was going to be very close between Knob Creek and Wild Turkey. I thought those two were going to be the two battling out at the very end of this thing. And I really couldn't tell you who was going to win because I think they're both fantastic pours, and they both have a lot of really good qualities. And I think there's a lot of similarity to some extent between Wild Turkey and between Knob Creek. Knob Creek tends to be a little bit darker in flavor, but they both have a lot of really cool characters. Wild Turkey's a little bit on the spicier side, but they're definitely, I thought those two would be battling out. So I thought number one would be Knob Creek, number two would be Wild Turkey. I thought number three would be Old Forester. So if I get any credit out of my predictions, I did pick the top three just in the wrong. I reversed 1 and 3, but I pretty solidly thought that Proof to some extent was going to play a part in here. Dark horse. Some people called Old Forester the dark horse. That's definitely true. So my prediction for number 4, though, definitely didn't come in number 4. So my prediction for number 4 was Elijah Craig. And as I mentioned earlier, I think Elijah Craig probably would have come in 4th if its matchups had been a little bit different. Like I said, it ran into two of the two winners, or two of the top whiskeys here in the first 3 rounds. So it really didn't stand much of a chance of getting through. So I thought Elijah Craig would come in 4th. It came in 5th, so that was close. I thought Buffalo Trace would come in 5th. And Buffalo Trace came in 4th. So those two just got reversed. And again, I think the tournament played a lot into that, although I think Buffalo Trace did match up against Elijah Craig. Did it ever? I don't know if it did. It might not have. Buffalo Trace. I don't know. Oh, no. That's one of the bonus. I shot that one, and it didn't make it because it wasn't one of the actual matches. So that'll be a bonus one you're getting. I think that'll be one of the more fun bonus ones. So we'll see who is the king out of those two. I thought Four Roses would come in 6th. I thought Woodford would come in 7th. And I thought Makers would come in 8th position. So those things, the only one I got right out of that bunch was Maker's Mark. I just knew, and maybe it's just me, but I knew Makers is not my preferred whiskey. I think it's okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with it necessarily, but it out of this bunch is by far the least complex whiskey out of the bunch. It just has a few basic notes. It's not offensive. It's easy drinking, but at the end of the day, it's just not what I'm looking for. So I definitely kind of felt like Makers was going to come in last. I knew Woodford would come in towards the tail end. I drank a decent amount of Woodford, and Woodford's a really good whiskey, but Woodford to me always comes off thin. It always just comes off like it has an amazing nose too. And I don't know how many of you agree with me out there, but Woodford has a great nose, and it just doesn't deliver on the palate. It's just too light for me. So anyways, I knew Woodford would be coming in the tail end of this thing, but yeah, I think there was a couple things that could have flip-flopped based on matchups. But for the most part, I think the shootout came out pretty accurately. So that was that. Let's see what we got going on in the chat. Donner Pass Whiskey just opened a Knob Creek single barrel store pick 2 nights ago. Those are always fantastic. You really can't go wrong. Brent Ross said, have I ever been to Knob Creek in Kentucky? It's where Lincoln lived, or Knob Creek, Kentucky. It's where Lincoln lived when he was a child. I've actually never been to Kentucky ever. So as someone who is involved in the whiskey world here, that's a problem. I need to make that happen, and hopefully I can do that soon. So I will that's definitely on my agenda of things to do. And unfortunately, and this was another question somebody asked me. I'll get to those questions later, but somebody asked me if I work as a full-time YouTuber or in the whiskey business, and I definitely do not. This whiskey stuff is all for fun on the side. I definitely have a full-time job that takes up a ton of my time. So I travel quite a bit for work, so I'm gone a lot. So yeah, this is definitely not a full-time gig for me. I wish it was. That'd be awesome, but definitely isn't. But yes, Kentucky is definitely on the agenda as soon as I can possibly make it happen. And for you guys that are asking me questions over here, if you could please just tag @BlindWhiskeyReviews before you put it, so that way I'll notice it. It's really hard to pick out comments when they're coming by. How about a rye tasting coming from Ken Prosser? I would really love to do a rye tasting. I love rye whiskey. I think it'd be fun to do a rye tasting because ryes vary so much and they tend to be a little bit more expensive. I think it'd be fun to mix in some really expensive ryes. Like if you guys have seen my review, I did a review of like Wild Turkey Cornerstone, which I think is a really amazing rye. I think it'd be great to mix that one in with some cheaper ryes because that rye is $170. I think it'd be really great to mix that in with some $50 rye like Pikesville and see who comes out on top and if there's really a big enough difference to justify that kind of price jump. So I think that'll be a fun one to do too. Let's see. Cooper 57M, what do you do? I don't want to get too detailed on what I do, but I'll just tell you that I am in the safety business. We'll call it the safety business. Donner Pass Wiki says he agreed on Woodford. Old Forester's a similar flavor profile, but has a much stronger offering to move up. Yeah, absolutely. I think Woodford is a really complex whiskey that just suffers from being watered down too much. I mean, I think that really is the end of the day. I haven't had a chance to drink. I've drank their I think they call it their batch proof one time, and I was impressed with it. I thought it was good, but I've only had it once, so I never like to judge a whiskey on just one taste. So I definitely would like to try more of that and just really see how that extra proof does for Woodford, because I really think, I mean, especially based on the nose, Woodford is just fantastic smelling. And if you could bring the flavor level up to that nose, it would be, I mean, damn near unbeatable. So we'll see. Brent Ross says Knob Creek Rye is great. Yeah, it is. Knob Creek Rye is great. And they have so many good rye releases that I think are really underrated. Like Knob Creek Rye, they have their standard rye release, which is good. They have their single barrel, like store prick rye releases, which are really good. They have their cast strength rye releases that they've done a couple years worth of now, which are also fantastic. So I really like what Knob Creek is doing in the rye space. Let's see. We'll take one more comment before we get on my next little segment here. Lucid BD, have you ever tried Chattanooga Beer Barrel Whiskey? I just tried stout and it's very good. I have not tried Chattanooga anything yet, I don't think. Their stuff's really good, but I have not had the chance to try it. I had my hands on a couple of bottles when I was in Atlanta. I was in Georgia traveling for work. I had a couple of bottles in my hand, but it was like super early in my trip, and I thought I was going to come across more whiskey. And if all of you travelers probably know, when you try to bring back whiskey, you can only bring back 6 liters. So you got to kind of manage how many bottles you're bringing back with you. So that's the situation there. I didn't pick it up, and I probably should have, because I don't think I brought almost anything back on that trip. Now, let's see. Let's get into some of my blunders here. Let me see if I can find the paper. So in one of the rounds, one of the nights I was shooting these, I think it was the second round, sort of, where we had already done the first round. So I knew the next 4 whiskeys were going to be the next round. I took guesses at what I thought the whiskeys were while I was doing it, just to see that when I got to the end, how my thought process and comparisons did. A lot of you were asking me throughout this shootout if I could tell what the whiskeys were. And I very consciously didn't want to say what I thought that they were, because I didn't really want to put that out there and make it seem like I knew what was going on necessarily, but I really wanted to try to let the flavor and the character of the whiskeys do the talking and not me guessing at what the whiskeys were. Because I really thought if I tried to focus on what I thought the whiskeys were, there may be some bias of all like, hey, I think this is Knob Creek, so therefore I think it is better. So I really wanted to try to just avoid thinking that way at all. And just kind of take the whiskey at face value and how it compared to the whiskey right next to it. And that's another thing I want to talk about, and we'll get to that next. But anyway, so in the matchups that we did in round 2, and again, some of these didn't end up airing, so these weren't necessarily in the shootout. But I won't tell you who won them, but I'll tell you what I thought. So Buffalo Trace went up against Elijah Craig. And in that matchup, now this is the one that let me see, 5 and 7. Yeah, so out of that batch of 8 whiskeys, I guessed 6 of them right, and I mixed up 2 of them. And that 2 I mixed up a couple times during the shootout, because there was a couple other times where I wrote down my guesses for what things were. And so the 2 that I actually kept mixing up were the same 2, and it was Buffalo Trace and Four Roses. And I never really would have thought that in my head I would have mixed those two whiskeys up, but I did it 2 times. And I guess they're closer in profile, at least at that point in time. They tasted closer in profile to me than maybe they are, or hey, maybe they are closer in profile. I really need to go back to them and try them again next to each other, because I was really surprised that those were the 2 that I mixed up. But yeah, that was the only 2 I got wrong. I got 6 out of the 8 right, and I just mixed up the Buffalo Trace and Four Roses in that second round. So the answer is yes. I did a lot of times feel like I knew what whiskeys I was drinking. But like I said, I tried not to focus on that and really try to focus on how one whiskey tasted compared to the other whiskey. And I think that was something that really stood out for me in this entire process, because I've never done something this extensive when it comes to doing a blind shootout before. And I really enjoyed how much the whiskeys changed when compared to a different whiskey. So when I had and I don't even know that these whiskeys fight, but whatever. If I had Wild Turkey next to Buffalo Trace, I noticed certain things. But then if I had Wild Turkey next to, let's just say, Elijah Craig, different things stood out in those whiskeys. They didn't taste quite the same because certain things compared to the other whiskey just stood out more. And I really found that interesting. If whiskeys had certain similarities about them, it made those characters kind of sit back. Not that they weren't powerful in flavor or powerful in amongst that balance of flavor, but they really didn't stand out because they were the other whiskey kind of had those same flavors. So let's just say we had 2 whiskeys with this, like a lot of those standard, brown sugar, caramel, chocolate, oaky notes. Those things didn't stand out. But if then you had one of those whiskeys was Wild Turkey, that spiciness really stood out. And I think it is a really, really good exercise to try whiskeys next to each other. A lot of people in this shootout were like, no, you got it wrong. And don't get me wrong, I was asking for it, so I wasn't offended by it at all. But I'm just saying a lot of people are like, no, you got it wrong. I would have picked this, or I would have picked that. And a lot of times my response going forward is always going to be, you may be right. Everybody's palate is different. However, you really need to try these whiskeys next to each other and just tell me what you think then. Because if you haven't done them side by side, you really don't know which one you prefer. Because as everybody knows, the human memory is absolute trash. So, yeah, it definitely doesn't mean anything if you just trying to remember which whiskey you like better necessarily. So let's see. I got a couple other topics here to talk about. Let's go back in the comments real quick and see what I missed. Lucid said, you said safety, have time on your hands, bald, must be a firefighter. Okay, so I will tell you, I'm not currently a firefighter. I moved into the safety business. At one point in time, I was a firefighter. I am still a trained and accredited firefighter in the state of California. However, I no longer work as a firefighter. So you are part right and part wrong. I'm glad you didn't try to guess what they were. I was also impressed how consistent you were with your notes. Yeah, a lot of people mentioned that. And I'm just really happy that it worked out that way. I wasn't sure, as everybody knows, your palate changes day to day, hour to hour, just depending on what's going on in your day. If you just had a meal with some spicy food, I've noticed like spicy food really messes with my palate and changes how I perceive flavors on whiskey. So I tried really hard not to do anything that would really mess up my palate, but I was really hoping that I could be consistent in this shootout, deliver consistent notes, and really give you guys an unbiased answer as to which of these whiskeys just was superior, and take the bias out. Because like I said, had my bias played in, Knob Creek definitely would have won in my head anyways. Brent Ross, 1792 is weird for me. I don't really like it myself, but when I have it blind with another whiskey, I tend to like it more. Yeah, and again, sometimes those side-by-sides just really make certain aspects of that whiskey stand out that you don't taste by itself. And I agree, 1792 isn't my favorite, at least their like small batch release. I find it kind of like Woodford in that it has a really great nose and it just doesn't deliver on the palate. It just feels really watered down. But drinking it next to something else really does, make things shine. So, YL says your top 3 were spot on. All 3 are rock solid. Yeah. And I mean, like I said, I guessed these would be the top 3. I didn't guess them in quite the right order, but I definitely kind of knew these 3 would shine. Like I said, I just was very surprised by how well Old Forester did. So let's have another drink here. Dang, that Wild Turkey's good too. And I was really happy to see a lot of people commenting that they were trying either the Old Forester or the Wild Turkey because of the shootout. Part of the reason I do this is to kind of help people make decisions and choose whiskeys and open themselves up to new whiskeys. And so it really is gratifying when people get something out of this and find a new whiskey that they like. And not that people didn't know Wild Turkey existed, but I got a lot of comments saying that people just thought Wild Turkey was a cheap mixer and not a bourbon that you would want to sip neat. And I think this shootout, among other people, I mean, other people have done a lot of side-by-side comparisons where Wild Turkey was included and came in really high or won. And so I'm just really glad to open people's eyes up to really good, inexpensive whiskey, and Wild Turkey is definitely one of those. So one other thing I wanted to talk about while we're here is that I had a contest I wanted to do that I thought was going to be a lot of fun. And let me just kind of tell you the background behind why I came up with this contest. Let me get a drink of water real quick. So as I was doing these shootouts, and depending on the night and how many of these comparisons I needed to do, if I was doing 4 shootouts, that would have been quite a bit of whiskey to drink. So I'm sure you saw in the videos, I wasn't finishing all the pours necessarily. So I would stick the pours in the back and move on to the next review. And so I would have leftover whiskey at the end of the night. So at the end of the night, I was just pouring all these whiskeys into one, small container, and then I would drink them another day because I didn't know which one was which, and I didn't want to sit here and try to figure it out or do any of that. So I just would pour them all into one container and make a little blend and drink it. And some of those blends came out to be actually really, really good. And I was so upset that I did not know what was in those blends because, like I said, I just poured leftovers of what was in the glasses, didn't know which glasses went in there, didn't know how much of each went in there. So it was really eye-opening at how good of a whiskey you can blend out of just simple whiskeys like these. So it gave me the idea that it would be a really cool idea to do a workhorse whiskey blend competition where you guys make any blend you want out of the 8 whiskeys. You can use 2 of them, you can use all 8 of them, any quantity you want, and we would do a contest as to who made the best workhorse whiskey blend out of these 8 whiskeys. And I thought that was gonna be a lot of fun. Now, however, with the whole COVID thing going on, it's probably not the best idea for us to be swapping this, that, and the other and giving you guys samples, sending out stuff to you, sending back stuff to me. So maybe that's something we can do in the future. Definitely let me know in the chat over here if you think that'd be a fun idea, if anybody would be interested in trying to make a blend out of these and putting it up to be judged on the channel, because I thought that'd be a lot of fun. But like I said, maybe that's just something we can do down the line here or with the next shootout or something like that. So definitely let me know what you guys think over there in the chat. Let's see here. So that was my idea for the contest. Now it's time for a sip of whiskey. All right. So let's get into some of your other questions. And again, if you guys out there in the chat have any questions I won't answer after this, definitely tag me over there at Blind Whiskey Reviews and put in your question, and I will do my best to answer it. So let's see. Let me pull up some of the questions I received in my email. Let's see. So I should have cut this question out because I don't know where the question is. Anyways, I'll come back to that. So Professor Toady sent me a number of questions. So and I answered this a little bit earlier, but have I considered a rye whiskey shootout? Yes, I definitely have. That's definitely on the list of shootouts that I would like to do. I think I answered this too, but who's behind the scenes? I told you guys my wife is the only one that behind the scenes, and she's the one making this thing happen. I couldn't do it without her. So definitely the big one helping me there. Have I been in any tasting competitions? No. And actually that's something I'd really like to do. I've never heard of a competition around me locally. I mean, I'm sure one goes off in Los Angeles at some point. Obviously San Francisco, which is pretty far from me, has one of the bigger whiskey competitions. But no, I've never tasted in a competition, but I'd really like to. I think that's fun. I answered your question. It was your question earlier about the full-time YouTuber. That's not really a question about doing a review of Horse Soldier. I've heard their stuff is really good. I'd like to review it. It's not easy necessarily to find, but I might be able to get a sample of it. And how does my wife feel about my channel and my ongoing investment in whiskey? Well, that's a good question. So you'd probably have to ask her actual opinion. She's very supportive with me. Obviously, she does a lot of the behind the scenes stuff with the channel. So she supports me in what I do with this stuff. obviously she was the main person behind this entire blind shootout. And she's going to be the one doing the rest of the blind shootouts too. So that she definitely is supportive. Now, how she feels about it, again, you got to ask her. I do buy a considerable amount of whiskey, so I'm sure she doesn't love that. However, I do my best to buy whiskeys that I can feature on the channel. I do buy a bunch of other whiskey that's just for me too, that, you know, you guys probably don't want to see because I've already reviewed it and whatnot, like extra bottles of Elijah Craig barrel proof and whatnot. But she's been supportive. She doesn't give me too much grief about it, so that's as best I can tell you as to how she feels about it. Let me pull up a couple of the other comments that I got. Let's see. That question I already answered. This question was, I kind of answered this too. So Stephen Owens asked in the comments of the video, excuse me, how many of these head-to-heads did I do each day? Like I said, I did more than I wanted to, but it varied. I think one day I might have done 6, which again, I didn't want to do that many, but it was just what I had to do to get it done. But if I had it my way, I would probably space them out more and do like 2 a night. That would probably be ideal. That way I'm not having to put down too much whiskey and mess up my palate. My palate could be as fresh as possible for every shootout. Whiskey Throttle commented on the video today saying, what happened? There was a sport coat and then there was no sport coat. What the hell? I just thought that was funny. I don't know if he's here in the chat. I haven't seen him pop up, but anyways, Daniel, if you do see this at some point, yeah, dude, that's the power of editing. I shot the entire shootout blind. I shot that intro last night. So I tacked that onto the video before I put it out this morning. But yeah, when I shot the video itself, that was weeks ago. And when I added that intro, again, I shot it last night and tacked it on. So that would be the answer to that question, my friend. Let's see who we got. We got some questions popping up in the chat here. Thank you again for everybody for joining in. Appreciate you guys coming by again. Hopefully you caught the shootout and enjoyed some or all of it. Yaya's Land said, smoking some cannabis while sipping whiskey brings out all the flavors in the cannabis and whiskey. It's a good combination. You know, I don't smoke a lot of cannabis, so I couldn't answer that question. So I've never done that comparison side by side. And kind of leading back to one of my former career in the fire service, smoking marijuana was not accepted. So I just never did it. So yeah, me and weed just don't know each other very well. Cooper 57M, I'm thinking for you to get into whiskey competitions, you first need to get experience with a peated scotch, or are there only bourbon competitions? I think you're right too. And not that I haven't had peated scotches. I have, but I just haven't had them on the channel. I fear the smoke, but I will be diving in head first. I definitely have some smoky whiskey hiding behind me over here, so we will be getting into those sometime in the near future. I have some smoked bourbons and stuff too, which I'm curious to get into, and I have definitely some smoked scotches, some smoked bourbons. I had something else smoked too, but I can't remember what it was. But anyways, we'll be getting into those. But again, I have had several smoked whiskeys. Some of them I liked, some of them I didn't. Probably my favorite that I've had is Lagavulin 16. I think it's a nice balance of smoke. I've had others where I think they're just so overly smoky, they're just not good. But we'll get there. We'll get there. Brent Ross says, when will she be on the channel? Ooh, I don't know that that's ever going to happen, man. I've asked her before about making a cameo, and she never seems very interested. Maybe one of these days we'll con her into coming on the channel. Maybe we'll have to get her a few drinks, get her buzzed to get her on here. But maybe one day. I'll try. That's all I can tell you. Dave Soderholm, how did you develop your ability with the tasting notes? I drink a variety of bourbons. Know they are different, but not sure what I'm tasting. I would just say experience. I mean, the more you drink, the more... and being analytical about what you drink. So if you just sit there and drink and aren't paying attention to it, you just enjoy you're just drinking the whiskey. You kind of know you like the flavor, but you're not trying to pay attention to it. You're obviously not going to create those connections in your brain that align certain flavors with the things that you're tasting in the whiskey. So I would say, drinking with the purpose of being analytical is super helpful. I mean, this channel was super helpful. I mean, not that I didn't have a decent palate when I started, but I definitely think my palate's greatly improved since I started. And I've mentioned this a lot of times, but I mean, I was really into craft beer before this for a lot of years, and I just kind of got used to like analyzing the beer and looking for certain flavors and characteristics and trying to align those with what my brain knows certain things taste like. I think I haven't done this, and I want to reach out to one of these companies and see if I can maybe get a kit or two, and maybe I can do a giveaway with one. But I'd really like to do one of those like sensory kits and just to kind of see and play with it. But I think those are probably really helpful too, to create those connections in your brain with, I smell this, and now I smell it on the whiskey. I smell it in this. This is oak, and I smell that here. So I think those kind of like associations are really, really helpful too. So that's that. Jason from the Mash and Drum. What's up, buddy? Yes, I am live. I know it is a very rare occasion that I go live, but I am here. Thank you for joining us. If you're here, I'm guessing the junkies are gone. I know you like to hang with those dudes. So I'm hoping maybe they're done by now, huh? Brent Ross, when my son and I did our 26 bourbons, we couldn't get a nose after 4 whiskeys. And yeah, that's a problem. And especially when you're doing high proof whiskey, it gets really problematic after you do a few of them. Your palate gets really numb and your senses kind of get dulled, and it's really hard to start telling the differences between those whiskeys. So I would definitely say one of the reasons I wanted to do this shootout as a head-to-head and not as a flight is because of that. I didn't want to compare too many whiskeys at one time. I wanted to give myself the opportunity, or the whiskeys the opportunity, to really shine. And I thought the best way of doing that was head-to-head and not in flights necessarily. I've done blind flights too, and I enjoy doing those too. I think there's value there. I just think it's harder, and especially with high proof. I mean, these weren't high proof whiskeys, but especially with high proof whiskeys, it's really hard to do blind flights. Yeah, Jason's concurring. Like, experience definitely helps. And like, I mean, I know it sounds corny to say like drink more whiskey, but I mean, really that's the case. Like when you drink more whiskey, and not just the same whiskey, but different whiskeys. And again, drinking them next to each other. If you drink, Old Forester and Wild Turkey next to each other, certain things are going to stand out more than maybe they would have if you just drank one of those whiskeys by themselves. So I think it's a helpful experiment. So doing things like that, is super helpful in getting your brain to kind of notice those characters. What else we got? No, the junkies will be on all night. No big deal either way. What are they? Have you ever thought of distilling your own whiskey? I mean, the thought has crossed my mind, but I'm pretty sure that's illegal. So I never thought really about doing it. I mean, distilling it is one thing. You can make moonshine pretty easy, but when it comes to aging the whiskey, I just don't know how good of a job you can do. And I'd be really upset to spend a whole bunch of time and doing nefarious activities that come out to taste like crap because I didn't have the proper like barrels or whatever you would need. And especially in the state that I live in California, it is really, really difficult to make good whiskey, as is evidenced by the few distilleries that I've gone to locally are terrible. I'm not going to name names, but they just can't make good whiskey. And part of the reason they can't make good whiskey is they can't age it. If they left whiskey in a barrel for 4 or 5 years, there would be nothing left in the barrel. We have a really hot and dry climate, and it stays that way most of the time. So much of the whiskey evaporates. They can't do it. And it's cost prohibitive, I think, for a lot of these young distilleries to, invest in a temperature or a controlled environment, like a controlling the humidity, controlling the temperature and all that. I think that's just, the cost of entry is just way, way too high for any young distillery to get into. So I just don't know if any California distillery is ever going to be incredibly, or at least down in Southern California, going to be incredibly successful, because it's just difficult to make good whiskey down here. I'm always open to trying it, but the ones that I've had just have not been really good. And not for lack of trying. You could tell that like they had done a good job producing the distillate, but they just lack the age that they need to make those things really shine. So let's have a sip here. All right. We'll go for another few minutes here. I think I had a couple other questions that were sent to me earlier. Let me check this one. I might have answered this one already. Yeah, Mark Saliba said in that commented earlier, I didn't know that you were unaware that this was the actual final matchup. So, yeah. So again, as I shot the blind shootout, I never knew, like, I mean, obviously I knew, like, I did the first 4 matchups at the same time throughout the day. So I shot those all at once. And I shot the second batch all at the same time because those are the only 2 rounds that really line up. After you get past the second round, there's a potential that some whiskeys get eliminated. So rounds don't necessarily line up anymore. So after that, I never knew where I was in the shootout. So I didn't know if I was judging winner's bracket, loser's bracket, if I was judging 2 whiskeys that had already been eliminated and I was trying to decide which one came in, 7th or 8th, or which one came in 5th or 6th. I just never knew which whiskeys I was judging or what round or what if they'd already been just, eliminated already. So at no point during this thing did I know where I was. So that really kind of helped keep it as blind as I possibly could. So it made it more difficult for sure because I had to shoot every single video before I could edit the first one because I never wanted to know what whiskeys won when, because if I knew like, okay, I shot round 1 and I knew after round 1, I shot 4 videos and I go back and look at which ones won, it's going to be really easy for me to tell what whiskeys are what, just because I know, okay, this one won. So these 4 are going to be matched up. I could figure that out. So I didn't want to give myself an easy time of trying to figure that stuff out. So I just kept the entire thing blind, which made it difficult, but I think paid off in that it was as unbiased and I had as little information as humanly possible while doing this thing. So that is the answer to that. I think I have one more thing I got earlier. Okay, so someone, and I kind of answered this again earlier, but I'll reiterate that KV Medman said that it might be a nice change if I had put in some different whiskeys from other distilleries that could keep up. Like Knob Creek is a signature of the Jim Beam line. Maybe if I used Maker's 46 for the Maker's representative, if I used Double Oak for the Woodford, Eagle Rare for Buffalo Trace. So that's all a really good thought. But again, as my point behind this whole thing was I wanted the through line on these whiskeys to be price, not like perceived quality. So I didn't necessarily want to pick the premium quality whiskeys. I wanted to pick the best whiskey from a distillery at the similar price point that I had set prior to the shootout. And I had considered doing like Eagle Rare for Buffalo Trace, but the reason I didn't was I know for a fact that in most places and even around me, I can find Eagle Rare for $30, but it is really difficult. Most places are bumping up in that like 32 to 35 range, if not 40. So I knew a lot of places around the country that price point wasn't going to be too close. So I decided not to use Eagle Rare. But yeah, I definitely in another video will make the through line either like proof or quality or perceived quality, so that way price isn't always going to be the determining factor in these shootouts, but I think in this one, that's really what I wanted to focus on. So yeah, that's why I didn't pick those in this. We'll definitely be doing, like I said, like a bottled and bond shootout where the through line is they're all bottled and bond, 100 proof. So you can rule out that piece of the puzzle. But then again, plenty of bottled and bonds, like you take Henry and McKenna, it's 10 years, and I could put that against, excuse me, a bottled and bond whiskey that's 4 years old. So is that fair? You got to pick one real through line for all the whiskeys. And everything else kind of, if you can get close, great. But a lot of times you're not going to be able to. So that's why I did that. Juru Mall in the chat here says, my opinions on, let me see if I can bring this stuff up. I hate this, just to get on my soapbox for 1 second, but this StreamYard sucks because you can't see in their chat when people tag you. So it's really annoying. Anyways, Juramal says, opinions on Texas whiskeys. I've talked about this a couple of times, but I'll reiterate the fact that as of yet, I'm open. My mind is open to Texas whiskeys, but I have really not had one that I liked. I have a few more here that I need to get into. I have some, I think like the Balcones standard bourbon. I've tried Balcones rye, did not like it. I've tried a couple Iron Root whiskeys, and I really thought that I would like those because a lot of people really tout those ones as very good examples of Texas whiskey, but didn't like those either. Now, I'm going to give them the caveat that their bottles they sent me samples. Those samples had leaked by the time they had gotten to me. And I didn't think it would have affected the whiskey. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that maybe it did, and I need to try their whiskey again. So I might go out and buy one of their bottles of whiskey and review it, just because everybody says it's so good. I can't imagine that. To me, it just tasted incredibly young, which it is. So, I mean, excuse me, man, I keep burping. So yeah, I don't know, man. I'll try their whiskey again, but I didn't like that. I didn't like Garrison Brothers. Here's my problem with Texas whiskey is I think all Texas whiskey is they try to say that it ages faster because of the climate in Texas, but I don't think that's true. I don't think their whiskey ages faster. I think they pull it out of the barrel faster, probably because depending where you are in Texas, it's a very similar climate to Southern California, that it's hot and dry, and they're going to lose all their whiskey. So, a lot of these Texas whiskeys are coming out at 2 years old, and they taste like 2-year-old whiskey. So what about that meant that it aged quicker? I don't know. But anyways, that's my take. I haven't tried very many. I am game to try more. I just haven't found the right one, maybe. So that is Texas whiskey for me. Brent Ross says they haven't seen Eagle Rare on a shelf in a year in Ohio. And yeah, Brent, that was another thing I put a few criteria on this shootout. I said they had to be under $30. They had to be widely available, which, I mean, it's arguable. Yes, Eagle Rare is widely available. I mean, Old Forester, I think there's some people can't get that either. So, I mean, to a degree, yeah. That was another reason, though. I know a lot of people can't get Eagle Rare, so I kind of wanted to rule that out for that reason, too. What was the other thing I said? I don't remember off the top of my head. Under 30, widely available. And I said between 90 and 101 proof, obviously, because I wanted to include Wild Turkey 101. But yeah, that was that. All right, guys, let's see what else we got. What do we got going on? What are you guys drinking? No, I don't think I've seen anybody say what they're drinking, but I haven't really been paying attention because I've just been talking my head off here. I didn't see what you guys were saying. Tag me and tell me what you guys think. What did you guys think about that shootout blending idea? I know I didn't see anything, but like I said, I was talking too much and not really paying attention. Try to scroll back and see. I really thought that was going to be fun. I thought it was going to be a cool thing. I thought it'd be cool to get you guys on the channel, maybe even bring you on when your whiskey came on and we could talk about it, or at least with the winners. I thought that'd be fun, but I can't find it in the chat. But anyways, let's see what people are drinking. We got Jay Armstrong is drinking Rare Breed. Yaya's Land is drinking Buffalo Trace. Kevin Brink has got Rare Breed. Joe Dawson's got Old Forester 101. Well, cheers to that. I'm going to drink some Old Forester 101 with you. Cheers, my friend. Adam Chapman's drinking Eagle Rare. Uncle Dave's whiskey's drinking Diet Coke because he's at work. Understood. Maybe later. E.H. Taylor small batch for the Mad K. Yanni Drum, Old Forester 100. Dave Soderholm has switched to Evan Williams Single Barrel. Now, Evan Williams Single Barrel is an interesting one, right? Because it tastes really good. It's really low proof. It's a little bit expensive for the proof, but it's a decent pour. I've got some not really old. I've got some like 04 Evan Williams Single Barrels, and those ones were 11 years old. And so it's kind of a bummer to see now that they're only like, what are they now? Like 8 years old. So I wish they would bring back a little bit more age to the Evan Williams stuff. But anyways, all right. I think that's probably about it for the comments and questions. And we're about at an hour, so it makes sense to wrap this thing up. So thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. Like I said, I really hope you enjoy the shootout. Thank you so much for all the input, all the comments, all the back and forth. It had been so much fun. It made this shootout so enjoyable, and I am definitely 100% doing one of these again, and hopefully it won't be too long before I can do it. So yet again, thank you so much. We'll be doing another one. If you aren't following me on Instagram and Twitter already, definitely follow me on those two platforms at blind_reviews on Instagram and Twitter, or at Mission Bottle Kill on Instagram. I'm going to be posting on those platforms when it's time to do the next shootout to get your guys' input. So definitely follow me there if you aren't already. That way I can get your 2 cents as to what to do next and which whiskeys we're going to include. So thank you so much, guys. Have a great night. Stay home, stay safe, drink whiskey, and we'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.